Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In our last week's session, we covered the tafsir from the beginning of ayah number 13 to ayah number 16 of Surah Yousuf. Very quickly, I will just summarize what we covered last week. In ayah number 13, Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, he responds to the sons and he says, قال إني ليحزنني أن تذهبوا به وأخاف أن يأكله الذئب وأنتم عنه غافلون. He responds to the sons by saying, verily it grieves me that you should take him away, that you should take Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam away. And I fear that a wolf might devour him, وَأَنْتُمْ عَنْهُ غَافِلُونَ, while you are completely careless of him. And we mentioned last week that over here, a dhib, wolf, could be taken literally or figuratively. Figuratively, it could be referring to the brothers. I fear that a wolf, meaning one of you, might attack him because he's like a sheep amongst his brothers. Also, we mentioned that the stronger opinion seems like Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam did not have a genuine fear of wolves, but he just kind of uses it as an excuse so that they would not beg and plead with him, and so he doesn't have to allow Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to go with them. And this in Arabic is called tawriya, which is not a lie because there is a possibility, a remote possibility, but it's still there that a wolf can actually come and devour Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, but he just kind of used that as an excuse, and we talked about what tawriya is in our last session. So then the sons, they respond and they say, قالوا لئن أكله الذئب ونحن عصبة إنا إذا لخاسرون. That if a wolf was to actually devour him while we are a strong group, then in that case we're indeed losers. How is it possible for a wolf to come and take our little brother from our midst? This is something that is not possible. So then Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, when all of his excuses were shot down, then he had no choice but to allow Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to go with them. So in ayah number 15, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ, when they went with him, when they took him, وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ, and all of them agreed to throw him into the bottom of the well. And then we mentioned last week that the sentence is not complete. Why? Because the details are too painful to even describe. And this is the general methodology of the Quran. The details of crimes and of fahsha and lewdness and things of this nature are not mentioned in detail. And also, it is understood, they did what they did. So you just kind of fill in the blank. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. And we revealed unto him that surely you would inform them of this matter of theirs, while they know not. And again, the stronger opinion seems like this is the wahi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down to Yusuf alayhi salam, not Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is not the type of wahi that made him a prophet. I talked about the 6 types of wahi, and one is the type of wahi that is one level lower than that which is given to prophets. Because he is still a child, and generally speaking, the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they received wahi at the age of 40, unless there is an exception, like in the case of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And finally, the last ayah was ayah number 16, وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ عِشَاءً يَبْكُونَ, that they came to their father at night crying. Okay, so they came later than expected. They were supposed to come before sunset, but to kind of add to the plot, they spent more time pretending that they were looking for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and they come crying, showing all of these false emotions. Today, inshallah, we'll move on to ayah number 17. قالوا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قالوا يا أبانا إنا ذهبنا نستبق وتركنا يوسف عند متاعنا فأكله الذئب وما أنت بمؤمن لنا ولو كنا صادقين. They said, O our father, verily we went racing with one another, and we left Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam with our belongings, فأكله الذئب. So a wolf came and devoured him. وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُؤْمِنٍ لَنَا وَلَوْ كُنَّا صَادِقِينَ. And you're not going to believe us, howsoever truthful we may be. So they come to their father and they say, we went racing with each other. They were the elders, so they're saying that we went playing some kind of game, hide and seek, or maybe some type of racing game, and he was the youngest one. Perhaps he wasn't able to participate, so we let him stay with our belongings, our food and drinks and our containers and whatever else they had brought for the picnic. So we left him there, and so what happened? A wolf came in, devoured him. And we mentioned earlier, this is the same excuse, they used the same excuse that Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam had mentioned earlier, which shows that they were not very mature in their planning. Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned that excuse, and it was just as an excuse. He didn't even genuinely have a fear of wolves. And now later on, they actually bring that same excuse and use it against Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. And they said, وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُؤْمِنٍ لَنَا. You are not going to believe in us. Okay? Mu'min means a believer. It comes from the word iman. Iman means faith, to believe in the unseen. Something you may not necessarily be able to prove scientifically. And hence it is called faith. So they said, you will not believe us, howsoever truthful we may be. Even if we're telling the truth, you're not going to believe us. Because this is such a far-fetched, such a preposterous and such a, outrageous story that there's no way a person can believe it. So they're trying to convince their father that the fact, this is actually very deep, that it is such a strange story, therefore that is the reason why they should believe him. Let me explain. Sometimes a person says a story and it seems so strange and just out of the blue and so weird that you think, because it is so strange, it is so weird, that he must be telling the truth. Otherwise, if he's lying, why would he say this kind of story? He would say something else. Okay, you make a better story. But the fact that it's so weird and doesn't really kind of make sense, because it is so strange, that maybe perhaps he is telling the truth. So sometimes you get convinced. And this is how they're trying to convince their father. Because of the fact it is so strange, it is so weird, that you have to believe the story. Because if we were to lie, why would we mention this kind of story? We would say something else. Ayah number 18. وَجَاءُوا عَلَىٰ قَمِيصِهِ بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ. Very beautiful ayah, and there's a lot that needs to be explained regarding this ayah. And وَجَاءُوا عَلَىٰ قَمِيصِهِ. And they brought forth his shirt بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ, with lying blood. قال, he said, بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Rather, your own souls have made some matter appeasing to you. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. So patience is most beautiful. وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. And it is Allah's help that is sought against all that which you ascribe. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they brought forth his shirt بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ, with lying blood. And generally speaking in English, we don't phrase it like this, lying blood. And even in Arabic, grammatically speaking, linguistically speaking, it should be damin makdhub. Okay? False blood. Not lying blood, because blood does not lie. But this is a type of eloquence, of balagha in Arabic, that you can ascribe the lying to the blood to show what a clear, bold-faced evil lie it was. It was almost as if the blood itself was lying. Okay, it's very, very powerful. It was almost as if the blood itself was lying. It was so clear. This was not the blood of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. What they had done was taken an animal, perhaps a goat or a sheep, or maybe even a rabbit, slaughtered it, and splattered the blood all over the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. And in their haste, they gave Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam the whole shirt. And it is said when Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam saw the shirt, immediately he knew that this is a story that they have concocted and that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam has not been killed. Because when he looked at the shirt, he said, what a merciful wolf this was, that ate Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam whole, but did not leave a single scratch on the shirt. وَجَاءُوا عَلَىٰ قَمِيصِهِ بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ. They brought forth his shirt with بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ, with false blood. And this happens even to this day. You have criminals, they commit a crime, but they make a huge blunder. They leave some very obvious clues behind, okay? Because every person makes a mistake. And even modern criminologists, they say, there is no such thing as the perfect crime or the perfect murder. They always either overplot or underplot. And this is why you have now the science of criminology, where they actually investigate, and you have forensic science, and they look for clues and try to see the culprit, to see the person. Because they say it is almost impossible for the average person to commit the perfect crime. They always leave behind clues. Okay, and if you read some of these stories, some of them it makes you laugh. I mean, the stories are sad, but when you see many of them, when they get caught, the clues they leave behind, very obvious clues, and eventually they get caught very easily. There's actually a story that there was a person that his wife was missing, and so he reported it to the police. And this is actually a true story that happened a few years ago here in South Florida, in Coral Springs. And so he reported it to the police, and immediately the police, they became suspicious of that person, the husband. And they knew just from the way he was speaking, and he would change his emotions so quickly that he would be crying, and all of a sudden you just stop, and it would be very abrupt. So he said that we kind of sensed it, that maybe perhaps he is the culprit. But anyway, they did not have any concrete evidence. What he had done was he had, it's a sad story, he had killed his wife, and then he had placed the dead body in the car, and then he drove the car all the way to to the bank of the river, and then he got out, he pushed the car over, he took his bike out, and his bicycle, he rode away, and he pushed the car over. Now, there's few things. Number one, they knew just from his emotions and the way he was speaking that he might be the person, but they didn't have any concrete, solid evidence. When he did all of this, when he did all of that, not only was everything recorded because he was in back of the building, and there was actually a camera that caught everything, okay? Of him actually opening the car door and taking his bike out and slowly then pushing the car over. Leaving that aside, the clues that he actually left behind was that his whole purpose of doing that was to show that it was his wife that actually committed the crime, that committed suicide and drove the car into the lake. But the problem is that a person who is tied up and the body is wrapped up will most likely not be able to commit this kind of crime. And number two, it will be a little bit difficult for the person to drive the car when he's sitting in the passenger seat, okay? And so there's a lot of stories like this. If you read articles, it says about the dumbest criminals in the world, how obvious signs they leave behind. There's another story that comes to mind that once a person, he robbed a bank, and when he robbed the bank, up to that point he was successful, he got everything, and then he went to his house or his apartment or whatever he was supposed to stay. Now it just so happened, and that day it snowed a lot, and maybe either at that area it wasn't wasn't common they wouldn't get snow that much, or maybe he was from the warmer part of the country, so he didn't realize that as he left the bank it had snowed a lot. And so he left, mashallah, some very nice, footprints in the snow. Okay, and it has snowed a lot. So he goes all the way to his house or his apartment. And so when the police come, they didn't even bother to look at the video. All they did, just follow his footsteps all the way to his house, and they found him inside there. So they left behind these clues. Now, obviously, not all of them usually leave behind these kind of clues. But my point is, they do leave behind something. Okay, because no one commits the perfect crime. They either overplot or underplot, and here we see this in the story of Yusuf ﷺ, that the brothers in their haste, they handed over the whole shirt and did not bother to tear it up. وَجَاءُوا عَلَىٰ قَمِيصِهِ بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ. They brought forth his shirt, بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ, with false blood. And notice that the shirt, this incident, or an incident with a shirt, appears 3 times in this surah. Once in the beginning, once towards the middle, and then once towards the end. Some unique incident that has to do with a shirt. So the first one is over here, when the brothers of Yusuf ﷺ bring the shirt. Okay? And in 2 of the 3 cases, the shirt is actually used as circumstantial evidence, which actually proves whether the crime was committed or not, or who the culprit was. So one was over here, where they brought the shirt, and Yusuf ﷺ, or Yaqub ﷺ, looking at the shirt, he knew that Yusuf ﷺ was not killed. The second one is towards the middle, when the wife of Al-Aziz, she tried to seduce Yusuf ﷺ, and he turns around and he races towards the door, and she grabs hold of him, and he's running towards the door and he's struggling to get out, and she grabs him from behind, and as he's struggling to go out and she's trying to pull him back, she ripped his shirt from the back. And as soon as the door is open, lo and behold, who did they find? They find the minister, okay, the husband of Zulaykha. And right away she blames Yusuf ﷺ. She says, مَا جَزَاءُ مَنْ أَرَادَ بِأَهْلِكَ سُوءًا إِلَّا أَنْ يَسْجَنَ وَعَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. What should be the punishment for one who tries to do evil with your family? Except that either he should be in prison or he should be given a painful punishment. And then Yusuf ﷺ, he defends himself. He says, هِيَ رَاوَدَتْنِي عَنْ نَفْسِي. She was the one who tried to seduce me. And then وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. A person from her family testified and said, look at his shirt. إِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصُهُ قُدَّ مِنْ قُبُلٍ فَصَدَقَتْ وَهُ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. If the shirt is ripped from the front, then in that case, she is telling the truth and he is lying. وَإِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصُهُ قُدَّ مِنْ دُبُرٍ فَكَذَبَتْ وَهُ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. If it is ripped from the back, then she is lying and he is speaking the truth. Because if it is from the front, it shows that perhaps she was struggling, and so there's actually an equal chance, either him or her. But anyway, the person who was from the family, so said we give it the benefit of the doubt that perhaps she is speaking the truth. But if it's from the back, then definitely it has to be that she's the culprit, because there's no way that Yusuf ﷺ can rip his own shirt from the back. So that means that she was the one who was pulling the shirt. And when they saw it was ripped from the back, they knew who the culprit was. So this was the second incident with the shirt. And the third is towards the end, when Yusuf ﷺ identifies himself to the brothers. Okay, and then the brothers, they tell him about Yaqub ﷺ and what he has gone through, and the grief and the sorrow that he has gone through. And he has gone through so much sorrow that he has lost his eyesight, he has become blind. And so Yusuf ﷺ, he says, اذهبوا بقميصي هذا فألقوه على وجه أبي يأتي بصيرا. Take this shirt of mine and place it on the face of Yaqub ﷺ, and his eyesight will be restored. So the incident with the shirt, it comes 3 times in this surah. وَجَاءُوا عَلَى قَمِيصِهِ بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ. They brought forth his shirt with false blood. قال, he said, بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Nay, your own souls have made some matter appeasing to you. Now, bal in Arabic is known as harf al-idrab, and there is no English equivalent to this. It's kind of like but not exactly. Bal, it comes for negating all that which comes before it and affirming all that which comes after it. So he's saying bal, okay, meaning whatever you're saying, the story that you have come up with about, a wolf eating Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, this is wrong. سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Rather, your own souls have made some matter appeasing to you. Now, this is actually a very deep critique. He's criticizing them, but this is a very deep critique. Your own souls have made some matter appeasing to you. So he doesn't know the details. He doesn't know the whole story. But he knows they have come up with some plan. So he says, your own soul have made some matter appeasing to you. So he's not just saying, you have done something wrong. Okay, which is a very straightforward, simple critique that you have done something wrong. He's saying that in order to enact this plot, you had to convince yourself that this is right. Your own conscience have been corrupted and you had to justify it. And you know that this justification is wrong. So you had to justify it, and basically he's going much deeper. He's psychoanalyzing and he's striking the guilt deep inside. He's not only just criticizing the action, but he's criticizing the niyyah and the frame of mind behind the action. Okay? سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. See, it is one thing to do something wrong. It is far worse when you actually try to justify it. Okay? Because when you know you have done something wrong, you always have the opportunity of improvement. But when you justify it, and you know that what you're doing, that is something that is wrong, is right, then you never have the opportunity to repent and to make some improvement. And this happens a lot of times. Many of us who may have a good heart, we always try to justify the things that we do. Okay? If you're at least at the level where you know that what you're doing is wrong, you always have a door of improvement. But when you think that whatever wrong you're doing is right, then there's no room for improvement. There's no way that you're going to repent. And you see that so many people that are committing so much haram or committing some sin, you ask him. Now if he says, yes, this is my weakness, alhamdulillah, this is good. At least he's accepting and he's admitting. But most of the time, they always would have some excuse. They will have some justification of why they're doing whatever they're doing. Why the brother is not fasting in the month of Ramadan, why he has not performed Hajj, why this, why that. He'll always come up with some justification. The sister, why they're not wearing hijab, so on and so forth. They'll always have something, any person, where the brother or sister, they will have something wise to say. The hijab, well, the hijab is in Islam. Islam is not in the hijab. They always have some justification. And obviously when you reach that level, then there's no room for improvement. So قال, he said, بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Rather, your own souls have made some matter appeasing to you. Okay, and this happens even with, even modern criminals. Some of them are very evil, but a lot of them, that they still have some good in their heart. And why they're doing that crime, they will have some justification for it. Why they even rob a bank or rob people, they will have a reason to justify it. Well, they have all of the wealth. We're not just stealing the money from the poor. They have all of our wealth. We're just taking a small portion. They're mashallah, they're millionaires, 20, 30, 40 times. What is that really going to do? And we're the ones that are struggling. And this is how they actually think. This is how they try to justify their actions. There was actually one person that, I happened to speak to myself, and by speaking to him, I realized that he actually had, a good heart. He actually had some goodness in his heart. It's just that he happened to be with the wrong crowd and in the wrong environment, and he developed that bad habit. But from the way he said he was committing the crimes, you can tell that he actually had a good heart, because they had some rules. One of the rules was that they would not, rob or steal anything from old ladies. They would not hurt children. They had all of these rules. And he said one of the reasons he got caught at the end was because there was actually a young child that came in the middle, and he did not want to hurt the child, and therefore, everything did not go according to their plan, and so he was caught. And he was like a career criminal. So just by looking at that, you know that he has some goodness in his heart. But why he's doing everything else? Because obviously he has it justified, because they have everything. We're only taking from the rich, right? And they have millions, so 10, 20, 30, 40,000 will not make a difference. So every person has some reason to justify whatever they're doing. سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Your own souls have made some matter appeasing to you. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. So patience is most beautiful. Now this is not a complete sentence. Sabrun Jamil, these are just two words. Sabr, patience, beautiful. So you have to kind of fill in the blank when you translate it into English. So patience is most beautiful, or sabr is the most beautiful, or the best thing and the most beautiful thing I can do right now is to have sabr, is to have patience. And sabr is another topic in and of itself. And this is not the time to go into all of the details, but you just have to realize that sabr is very central to Islam. Ali radiallahu anhu used to say that sabr to iman, patience to faith, is what the head is to the body. Once the head is severed, the whole body, the entire body will collapse and fall to the ground. And then he would raise his voice and he would say, he who does not have sabr, he has no faith. Look at the ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah in the first juz, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, O you who believe, ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah. Seek help through patience and salah. Inna Allaha ma'a sabirin. Verily Allah is with those who are patient. And scholars have said there are only a handful of nouns that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's with. And of them is those who are patient. We all know Surah Al-Asr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this surah mentions the qualities of the believers. Therefore, those who believe, do righteous deeds, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, encourage others to the truth. And the fourth one is, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, they encourage others to be patient. Even though sabr is part of Amil Salih, but because of its importance, it is mentioned separately. In Surah Al-Baqarah, in the second juz of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the believers. The true believers are those, إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ, when they're hit by calamity, they say, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ, to Allah we belong, and to Him we should return. Salama radiallahu anha, one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, she said that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, and the hadith in Sahih Muslim, any Muslim, any believer, he's hit by a calamity, and then he says what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered him to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, and then he adds to it the following dua, Allahumma ajurni fi musibati wa akhluf li khayran minha. O Allah, reward me through this calamity, and give me something better than it. Give me something better than what I lost. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reward him because of that calamity, and will give him something better than what he lost, or she lost. So Salama radiallahu anha, she says that, I said this dua when my husband Abu Salama passed away. But she said, I could not help wondering who could actually be better than Abu Salama. Abu Salama was a great companion of the Prophet ﷺ. So she said, I could not help think who could actually be better than Abu Salama, because the dua is, oh Allah, give me something better than what I have lost. And she said, I continued making this dua. And eventually what happened? She was then married to the Prophet ﷺ, and so she got someone much better than Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So that is a dua that we should make. Also realize that sabr that is needed from a person is when the calamity first strikes. Okay? Not after a day, not after 3 days, not after you have let loose all of your emotions and you have already punched the guy, and then you say, okay, now let me show patience. Because then that basically you have, the whole concept is then lost. Rasulullah said, إِنَّمَا الصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ صَدْمَةِ الْأُولَى. Sabr that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from a person is when the calamity first strikes. Once Rasulullah was passing by, and there was a woman, she was crying because her child had passed away. Okay? And Rasulullah gave her some words of comfort and solace, just to comfort her a little. And she did not know this was the Prophet ﷺ. So she was, because of the state she was in, she said, إِلَيْكَ عَنِّي, stay away from me. You don't know what I have been afflicted with. And then the Rasulullah ﷺ did not say anything. And it shows his wisdom. He didn't say anything further, because he knows that this is not the right situation. So he left her. And then someone came and told her, do you know this was the messenger of Allah? And immediately, remorse entered her heart, and quickly she went to the Prophet ﷺ's house, and she said, O Messenger of Allah, I did not know this was you. And the Rasulullah ﷺ then mentioned the same hadith, إِنَّمَا الصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ صَدْمَةِ الْأُولَى, that verily sabr that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from a person is when the calamity first strikes. Also, another unique thing about sabr is that, unlike everything else, you will be rewarded. And there's usually an amount that is mentioned of how much reward and how many blessings you get. But when it comes to sabr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Okay? Without any account. When it comes to Quran, for every letter you recite, you get 10 blessings. When it comes to salah, when you prayed in jama'ah, it is increased to 27 times. Anything, nafal ibadah, you do in Ramadan is multiplied by 70, so on and so forth. But when it comes to sabr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention any amount. إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُم بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward those who are patient بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ, without any amount. Also, another thing about sabr is that there is actually of 3 types. Sabr literally means to restrain yourself, okay? To keep yourself back, to hold your emotions. An animal that is reined is called masbur, okay? It is reined, it is controlled. So when you control your emotions, this is called sabr. And it's very difficult because sabr is inaction in the face of wanted action. Someone says something, someone makes a comment, you want to reply, you want to let loose your emotions, your blood is boiling. But when you hold your emotions, this is sabr, okay? Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِسُرْعَةٍ إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. That the strong person is not the one who can throw another person down to the ground, can wrestle someone down. إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. The strong and powerful person is the one who can control his emotions, his anger, when he's upset. So this is just one type of sabr. You know, sabr ala al-musibah, sabr at the time of calamity, and this is the general one that we know. But scholars have mentioned 2 other types of sabr. So the first one is sabr ala al-musibah, sabr at the time of calamity. Then you have the second type of sabr, which is even more difficult, sabr ala al-ta'a. Okay, having patience in obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of courage to pray all the 5 salahs on time, to come to the masjid, especially for the brothers, you know, to drive all the way to the masjid, wake up early, pray the fajr salah, pray all of the salahs. It takes a lot of courage to, you know, fast in the month of Ramadan. It takes a lot of patience. And it is the month of patience. When you go for Hajj, it requires a lot of patience, so on and so forth. So this is the second type of sabr. And then you have the third type of sabr, which is even more difficult than the first 2. And it is so difficult that sometimes people try to find some way of justifying whatever they're doing. People who have some knowledge, they will try to use some justification of why they're doing the haram. What is the third type of sabr? Sabr, having patience in avoiding the haram. Okay? So the first one is patience during a calamity. The second one is having patience in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in worshipping Him. And the third one is having patience in avoiding the haram. Okay? And this is actually the most difficult one. You sometimes ask a person why is he, you know, involved in haram, why is he eating haram or selling haram or what have you. He will give you 101 excuses. You know, you might ask the sister why she's not wearing the hijab, and subhanAllah, mashallah, they'll give you all of these excuses. They'll always try to justify what they're doing, because this is very, very difficult. So this is the third type of sabr. And then each sabr, again, further is divided into so many different levels. Okay, it's not just one category, it's a spectrum. So you can have normal sabr, you can have good sabr, you can have the best sabr. The highest is sabrun jameel. Okay, the highest form of sabr. And this is what Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam says, فَصَبْرٌ jameel, I will have patience. What type of patience? The most beautiful patience. One is just regular patience, where you don't complain, you don't say much, but you still want some patting on the back, you still want people to comfort you and to say some words of comfort to you. Okay, you want some worldly benefit. And then you have the other type where you take it directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't complain to the creation. Okay? You basically complain of your situation and you only speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we see later on in the surah that Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, إِنَّمَا أَشْكُ بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. Verily I complain of my grief and sorrow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, when we come to that point, we will discuss what that means when you complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what that really means. So for sabrun jameel, he says, I will have patience, jameel, which is most best, which is most beautiful. وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. And it is Allah's help that is sought against all that which you ascribe. And this is a very powerful statement, and this is something that we should memorize. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. And this was also the same statement that was made by Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she was actually accused of a crime, okay? A crime that no human being, no believer could ever think of. Okay, and it's actually a very long and a very emotional story, but I'll just mention the portion that is related to this part. it is said that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she was on an expedition with the Prophet ﷺ, and eventually there was some of the munafiqun, some of the hypocrites, they started spreading this rumor that she had committed na'udhu billah, the unthinkable, that she had na'udhu billah committed zina, adultery. And this was something that was spread amongst the people of Medina. The munafiqun were the ones who made this rumor, and then it was spread by others. Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that she did not know of this, but she, however, noticed the behavior and the attitude of Rasulullah towards her. She says that I started seeing that he was not showing the usual affection and love that he would show normally. And then she came to know of this from her friend, that this was a rumor being spread around. So then she goes to her parents' house to verify to see if it is true or not, and she came to know that yes, it was actually a rumor that was being spread around, and it was spread around for 1 month. And she says that when she heard this from her parents, she was just shocked. She couldn't even go to sleep. And then after, it's a long story, eventually Rasulullah came in, and she says that the Prophet came very close, and he sat very close to me. And he said, since the rumor has started, he had never been this close to me. And then she said, oh Aisha, if you are innocent, then I expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reveal something about your innocence. But if you have committed some mistake, then ask Allah for forgiveness. Because when the servant of Allah asks for forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives him. When he admits his mistake, Allah forgives him or her. She says, when I heard these words from the Messenger of Allah, my heart just broke. The tears just dried up in my eyes. That actually everyone is now starting to believe this. Okay? And she says, I asked, I looked at my father to see that maybe he might be able to defend me, to say something in my defense. But he says, there's nothing I can say, I don't know what to say. She said, I looked at my mother, she was also speechless, she could not say anything. And then she said, and this is what she said, if I were to say that I'm innocent, and Allah knows that I'm innocent, you would not believe me, because everyone has been spreading this rumor. And if I were to say I have done this, and Allah knows that I have not done this, you would believe me, but that's not the truth. So he says, all I can do and say is what Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. Patience is most beautiful. وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. It is Allah's help that is sought against what they ascribe against me. And she said immediately after that, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he got into the state of wahi. When he would get revelation, his head used to perspire and sweat used to drop from his forehead. And they used to describe it like pearls dropping from his forehead. And even if it was a very cold night, he would start to sweat. And then when he received the revelation, then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, oh Aisha, receive the good news that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed 10 ayahs exonerating you. And she says, I knew Allah would reveal something about me, but I did not know that 10 ayahs will be revealed in the Quran that will be recited till the Day of Judgment. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ جَاءُوا بِالْإِفْكِ عُصْبَةٌ مِّنْكُمْ. From that all the way, for the next 10 ayahs, it talks about this rumor and this allegation that they had spread. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually rebukes those who are spreading this around. And then the parents, they say, okay, oh Aisha, now go and you thank the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she said, well, I'm going to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because obviously being the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she has the audacity to actually say that. She said, no, I'm not going to now. I'm going to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He's the one who has revealed this concerning me. So, Wallahu al-musta'anu ala ma tasifun. It is Allah's help that is sought against all that which you ascribe. We'll stop here inshallah and we'll continue with the next ayah the following week. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.